Hey, welcome. You ever wonder if your weirdest habits, the ones you kind of keep to yourself, could actually be signs that you're, well, brilliant? In a world that's always telling us to be normal, we're about to dive into the unconventional, sometimes messy, and often solitary habits that science is now linking to high intelligence. So let's get into the fascinating research that suggests your oddest quirks might just be your biggest strengths.
So let's just kick things off with a big question, one that really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. Are your quirks actually clues to your genius? I mean, if you've ever felt just a little out of step with everyone else, you're going to love this. We're going to look at the science that reframes all those little oddities not as flaws, but as the signature of a mind that's just working in extraordinary ways.
All right, first up, we need to challenge this idea that a lot of us just take for granted, the whole myth of normal. We're about to see how some of the most misunderstood behaviors are actually signs of some serious cognitive strength. Society has this way of pushing us to fit into a neat little box. But here's the thing. A ton of research is now showing that a highly intelligent brain doesn't just think differently, it often behaves differently. It develops habits that are perfectly optimized for deep thinking and creativity, even if they look a little strange from the outside. And that leads us right into our first major theme, the power of solitude. This is a huge one, because while so many people are afraid of being alone, brilliant minds, they often crave it. And it turns out there's a really fascinating evolutionary reason why. So it all comes down to something called the savanna theory of happiness. The basic idea is that our brains are still kind of running on software designed for our hunter-gatherer ancestors. Back then, you lived in these small tribes where being social 24/7 was literally key to survival. But here's the twist. Higher intelligence is really about solving new problems. It's like a cognitive upgrade that lets a brain handle our super complex modern world without needing that constant tribal high five. And wow, does this study nail that point. This 2016 study basically flipped the entire script on what makes us happy. For most people, yeah, seeing your friends more often makes you happier. But for the folks with the highest IQs, the opposite was true. The more they socialized, the less satisfied they were with their lives. It's not that they're antisocial. Their brains are just wired for a different kind of stimulation. Okay, so let's be super clear here. This is a crucial distinction. We are not talking about loneliness, which is that awful, painful feeling of being isolated when you don't want to be. We're talking about solitude, a deliberate choice to be alone, to restore your energy. I love how the psychologist Paul Tillich put it. Loneliness is the pain of being alone, but solitude is the glory of being alone. For a brilliant mind, it's a strategic retreat. It's where the real work gets done. All right, let's shift gears and actually peek inside the mind itself. We're going to look at habits that reflect a super overactive inner world. These are the little cognitive quirks that might look weird to other people, but are actually powerful tools for a brain that's always on. First up, a total classic, talking to yourself. Come on, we've all done it, and then immediately felt a little nuts, right? But what if it's actually a sign of your brain kicking into high gear? Turns out it's far from a sign of instability. Science shows it's a seriously powerful cognitive tool. Even Einstein was known to mutter his way through problems. So what's actually going on here? Well, research shows that when you talk out loud, psychologists call it self-directed speech, you're engaging more of your senses. You're not just thinking, you're hearing yourself think. And this simple little act can help you find your keys faster, organize a really complex thought, and lock in a decision. It's basically your brain holding a super productive meeting with itself. Okay, what about zoning out? You know the feeling. You're in a meeting, you're nodding along, but your mind has completely checked out and is off redesigning your living room. It might feel a little embarrassing, but a wandering mind isn't necessarily an unfocused one. In fact, it's often a sign of a highly efficient brain. And here's the cool science behind it. When your mind drifts off, it activates something called the default mode network. Think of this as your brain's creative playground. It's the space where it connects all these distant ideas and cooks up those aha moments. A really efficient brain can just switch into this mode to do some background processing on tough problems, all while you're still basically on task. It's deep work, just in disguise. Now, this next one might feel totally backwards, but stick with me. Research suggests there's a really strong link between high intelligence and, believe it or not, anxiety. It kind of makes sense when you think about it. A brain that's amazing at deep analysis is also going to be really, really good at imagining every possible thing that could go wrong.
This is sometimes called the hyperbrain hyperbody theory. Get this, a 2018 survey of members of the high IQ society Mensa found that a full 20% of them had a diagnosed anxiety disorder. So why is that? Well, highly intelligent minds often come with a heightened sense of self-awareness, intense empathy, and this tendency to overanalyze every single possibility. It's sort of the downside of having a mind that just sees and feels more of the world.
Okay, let's move from the inner world to habits that show up on the outside. The stuff that really defies social conventions, from the words we choose to the spaces we keep.
Let's talk about swearing. The old myth, right, is that people curse because they're not smart enough to think of better words. Well, research completely blows that idea out of the water. A 2015 study found that people who could rattle off the most swear words also had a larger overall vocabulary. The reality is that profanity is a nuanced part of language. It's used for precise emotional expression. It's not a sign of a weak vocabulary, but a really robust one.
And what about the classic messy desk? This study from the University of Minnesota is just so cool. It found that people in a clean, tidy room, they were more likely to be conventional, play it safe, and make healthy choices. But when they put people in a messy room, they generated way more creative and innovative ideas. It seems like disorderly environments actually inspire our brains to break free from tradition, and that's where new insights come from. And hey, a quick shout out to all my fellow night owls out there. If your best ideas seem to hit you after midnight, you are in very good company. Research has actually linked a preference for staying up late with higher IQ scores. The theory is pretty simple. It's a sign of evolutionary adaptation, a mind that isn't tied to that ancient early-to-bed, early-to-rise cycle. So when you pull all of this together, what's the big picture? I think it means it's time for all of us to start redefining what genius actually looks like. Intelligence isn't always neat and tidy. It doesn't always look like a perfect test score. It's messy, it's complex, it's this diverse set of traits. It's the daydreamer. It's the person who talks to themselves. It's the person who needs to be alone to feel whole. It is so much less about a single number and so much more about a unique way of thinking and being. So the most important takeaway here is this. Your weirdness is not a bug, it's a feature. It is the signature of a mind that's just wired differently, a mind that's processing the world with more intensity, more creativity, and more nuance than the average person. It's not something you need to fix. It's something to understand and, honestly, to embrace. And if you ever start to doubt any of this, just remember who you're siding with. Nikola Tesla, one of the greatest inventors in history, absolutely knew the power of unconventional thinking. He said, "Be alone. That is the secret of invention. Be alone. That is when ideas are born." Which leaves us with one final thought to take with you. Instead of questioning your quirks, maybe start asking yourself a new question. What is your weird wisdom? What unique insights and strengths do your so-called strange habits actually give you? Now that is something worth exploring. Thanks for listening.